When we think about the power of story, it really plays out in a whole host of public moral arguments. Towards the end of this semester, I'll be asking you to produce a 3 to 5 minute values-based argument about a public moral argument of your own choosing. In addition to producing that 3 to 5 minute video argument, I'll also ask you to make a 1 to 2 page outline of the argument you produce. In doing so, I want you to think a little bit about what a public moral argument looks like and what the features of a public moral argument are. To do that, I'll outline 5 features of public moral arguments. The first is that they're made for generalized consumption, or they're available to all to be engaged in. The second is they tend to be aimed at untrained thinkers. We can think here a little bit about conspiracy theories or various different controversies. Those are often not rooted by the experts or the technical decision makers in those fields, but instead they're passed around in certain social media circles or in fan clubs or small groups. Those are indeed untrained thinkers, and it might be helpful to think about the narratives that they share. However, they don't just share those narratives amongst themselves. The third important feature to note of any public moral argument is that it naturally crosses over a whole host of argumentative fields and often involves an interdisciplinary community or collaborations of individuals from various different disciplines and academic or intellectual conventions. And so in this sense, they create controversy when different conventions, different organizations and groups have different beliefs about various different theories or associations. One of Walter Fisher's main concerns when describing narrative theory was ultimately that with rational argument, only experts were able to discern true and false. You needed scientists there to look at the data and really be able to do the measurements. And he suggested that it's important that scientists are able to otherwise create stories that are aimed at the general public so that the general public can better understand the things happening in science or technology or various different realms that might not be easily grasped by untrained thinkers. As we think about a few additional features of public moral argument, it's important to note that public moral arguments aren't accounted for in the rational world paradigm. Indeed, the motivations or the characters involved often exceed simply scientists, but involve a whole host of individuals, and it isn't simply to do science or to produce knowledge, but sometimes it's for deceit or unethical purposes, or because they think that the government is duping them and there's some reason to come up with some crafty new conspiracy. Right? So the motivations and the values of the various characters involved in facilitating public moral arguments aren't simply rational, but involved in a whole host of emotional and social connections. The agents and the way that they influence the behavior ultimately lead to a certain climax in the plot. We're making decisions now in politics based not necessarily on rationality, but on the narrative structures of the stories we tell and that we circulate. So the probability and the fidelity of the stories we've heard help influence our decisions. And it's for this reason that Walter Fisher says that experts should serve to act more as counselors and develop effective stories that help them cross their technical expertise and knowledge into the realm of public knowledge so that individuals can pay attention to their presentations, become subject to the narrative stories that are invoked or invited into, and otherwise be moved or influenced by forms of persuasion that exceed pure rationality. With that, let's pause to think a little bit about the 4 theories we've covered today. We first described 2 pre-decision theories. We talked about social judgment theory and elaboration likelihood modeling. We then talked about 2 post-decision theories. We talked about cognitive dissonance theory, and we also talked about the narrative paradigm and the theories associated with it. At this point, at the close of our lecture, my hope is that you're able to think about some examples of where each of those theories apply and discern the differences between the pre- and post-decision theories. If you have questions or concerns about any of this content, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my Google Hangouts line or send me an email. Again, I hope to hear from all of you in the next week or so, just to know you're doing well as we transition from the beginning of our semester into this online semester now. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you with another video soon.